In a different world, in a distant solar system, in a city made of waves and light, you walked into an arcade. Not just any arcade, the most advanced arcade known to the people of that realm. State-of-the-art, mind-altering. You walked around for a little while and you finally settled on a game that looked decent. It was called Life. It seemed fun. No fancy screens or devices, just a simple headset. It guaranteed the most interactive experience, something unique and transformative. Immersive entertainment at its most perfect. You lowered the immersion helmet into place. Let's hope this is a good one. Your last thought before you woke up in a bed. It was morning. A middle-aged woman walked into the room and sat down beside you. She was beautiful in an ordinary kind of way. Black hair and green eyes. She had a small scar over her right eye, with a smile that seemed important and kind. It's time to wake up, she said. The early bird catches the worm. Breakfast is on the table. Don't let it get cold. She kissed you on the brow. What was this? You looked down and saw the body of a child, a young child. The room was the room of a boy. The wallpaper, a tapestry of baseball players in all fashion of sport, catching and sliding. Your name was Max. You liked riding your bike and fishing at Balsam Lake. Your mom worked at the hair salon and your dad was an electrician. Kim and Scott. Every Sunday, your dad would take you on a hike. It was your favorite thing to do. The stories he would tell, good ones and bad ones, but always so interesting. Sometimes you would bird watch along the way. Dad knew the name of almost every bird you would come across. Life then was simple, but it didn't stay that way. High school was tough. You didn't have much of a talent for anything. You weren't good in sports or art. You couldn't keep up in math and you had to do summer school. Worst summer ever. But you made it. College was a little better. You met a girl. You learned you could drink alcohol with the best of them. People found you funny. Other kids gravitated to you. Your girlfriend liked sneaking into your dorm and staying the night. Her hair almost strangling you as you both tried to sleep in your tiny twin bed. You loved her with all of your heart, but she decided to leave you. Broken hearts are part of life, you thought. You cried yourself to sleep for a few days and the alcohol helped. School ended and you went home, back to the town you grew up in. A war was breaking out on the other side of the world. Broken-hearted and melancholy, you walked into town and enlisted in the United States Army. Because you were well educated, they made you an officer. Basic training was an ordeal. Early mornings and a lot of running, a lot of walking. Seemed like all you ever did. They taught you how to kill, how to fight, and how to do it free of feelings and empathy. They trained you to be a machine. You started to think one night that this life wasn't for you. Your spirit wasn't in it. You weren't much for hurting others, but you had enlisted and duty called. Finally, you were shipped to Africa to fight the German Third Reich. You were 20 years old and eager to get to war, like the rest of your division, excited to get on with it. Little did you know how quickly you would feel the cold shiver of death down your spine. You saw things that no one should have to see, holding the head of your best friend as he frantically took his last breath. You never forgot the look in his eyes. It still haunts you, so very far away. You killed men during the war. You never took pride in it. It's just what needed to be done. War is the cruelest thing imaginable. It made young men old before their time. In the Battle of Alcatar, you were shot 4 times and barely survived. You lost 3 toes and the sight in your right eye. But you fell in love with the African nurse that treated you. She was beautiful and kind. When she looked at you, it felt peaceful, like your souls had met before. Her name was Yumna, meaning good fortune in Swahili. She brought you back from the dead in body and in soul. She would stay up until the early hours of the morning playing with your hair, looking at you with so much love it almost broke your heart. When they finally shipped you home, you felt a torrent of sadness. Leaving someone you had loved so dearly was torture. You kissed each other goodbye for the last time, both with tears in your eyes. You vowed to bring her home to the U.S. and spent the next year learning Swahili and sending her letters. Her responses were always prompt and loving. She wouldn't get herself too excited, just in case something changed. And on May 5th, 1945, you received the last letter from Africa. Yumna's mom was writing to tell you she had died of yellow fever. You fell to your knees in the driveway. How could life be this cruel? Everything that was good was suddenly taken away from you. Hope vanished and was replaced with grief and despair. You mostly laid in bed for the next year, feeling sorry for yourself. Every day your mom would bring you food that would stay untouched at the foot of the bed. Eventually, out of necessity, you took a job as a lumberman, cutting down ancient redwoods in the old-growth forest, killing 2,000-year-old trees. Being just as cruel as life had been to you, the world had made you a killer, the destroyed becoming a destroyer. Then, a random hiker changed your life. Her name was Clementine, but you called her Clem. She asked how to find the redwoods, and all you could do was point down the trail. Speech had become impossible. Her eyes were so full of love, as blue as any ocean you had ever seen. They held a kindness you couldn't remember. When people talk of love at first sight, I'm not really sure they understand the feeling. It was ecstasy and agony. She was home, and you were ashamed. You had been destroying the one thing that this woman had loved so dearly. Before you said another word, you vowed to never harm another thing again. On your first date, you confessed all of your sins. The men you had killed, the trees you had cut down. You cried like a baby all over your grilled cheese. She was your altar of love, and if she wouldn't forgive you, no one could. She reached over and took your hand. The next 2 words she said changed your life. You're forgiven. On your second date, you asked her to marry you, and she agreed. Together, you bought a house along a river, 15 Maple Lane. It became your sanctuary. In the summer, you would sit up to your waist in the rushing currents, smiling to one another like kids. At night, you would make love under the stars, holding each other all night long, a cool breeze gently caressing your naked bodies. She told you all her sins and you forgave her. You tried to have children, but it wasn't meant to be. Clem was barren. This hurt her more than she would ever admit. She would have made a wonderful mom. Maybe this kind of love wasn't meant to be shared. The years passed and the seasons changed. You took a job at a local pub and Clem started a small nursery. She called it Clem's Garden of Little Sprouts. It was a local sensation. It helped that Clem was so likable and charming. It became successful enough that you were able to quit your bar job and work along with her. At night, after a long day in the soil, you would feel at peace. Planting seeds instead of destroying redwoods was more up your alley. Your dad came to visit the nursery one day and asked to speak with you. He told you your mom had cancer and didn't have long to live. You could see how crushed he was. He didn't ask for help, but you knew immediately he needed some. Together, you and Dad made your mom's last days as comfortable as possible. She would hold your hand whenever she could, sometimes all night long. You would tell her stories of the war. She asked you if you were afraid of death during those days. Yes, you said. So afraid that sometimes all you could do was sit and shake, all your muscles failing at the same time. They called it shell shock. She nodded and fell into a deep sleep. Her green eyes never opened again. She was finally at peace. Dad died in his sleep a year later. They called it coronary artery disease, but you called it a broken heart. As always, Clem put you back together again. You put their ashes under 2 weeping willow trees and watched them grow. One day out of the blue, you got old. Your back started to hurt and bending down seemed a lot harder than it used to be. Your trail walks got a little more difficult. Life seemed less colorful, less inspired. On a Sunday evening in late September, life finally got the best of you. On the way home from a round of golf, a tractor trailer swerved into your lane and folded your Toyota in half. You briefly woke up in a pool of blood. There was a moment of terror followed by peace. You knew the end had come and you let go. All of a sudden, Clem was in the car with you. She whispered in your ear as you took your last breath. I forgive you. You were back in the arcade, weeping and laughing all at the same time, dripping with sweat. Moments of terror, joy, and love and pain resonated through your every core. Game over flashed across the screen, a prompt to play again. Tears fell down your cheek as you lowered the headset back in place. You liked this game.